the Classic Collectors 2 series, the Great Northern Railway, the most prestigious and critically acclaimed series in railroading history, returns as Video Rails presents the all-new 8mm Classic Collector series on the Great Northern. This incredible collection, which is comprised of footage spanning over 30 years, has been photographed by Anthony DeRosa, who worked for the Great Northern Railway. You will treasure the extensive variety of subjects and unique perspectives that make this series one of the most comprehensive collections of railroading films ever compiled on any railroad. Climb aboard as Video Rails takes you on a remarkable journey back in time to the legendary days of the Great Northern. Great Northern's vast rail network stretched across 7 states, from the Great Lakes to the Pacific Ocean. With headquarters located in Minneapolis-St. Paul, the route extends north to Duluth and Superior, and south to Sioux Falls. Climbing west to Minot, North Dakota and Great Falls, Montana, and continuing across the Rockies to Spokane. The main line extends south to Klamath Falls, Oregon, with connections to the Western Pacific. The route finally reaches Seattle, Washington, the West Coast gateway to the Orient. Great Northern's little 060, number 389, is an A9 class switcher working the yards at Williston, North Dakota, late in fall of 1952, as steam is beginning to lose its foothold on the railroad. Built by Baldwin Locomotive Works in October of 1912 with 49-inch drivers, she was later rebuilt with 52-inch drivers, giving the engine an increase in tractive effort to 26,850 pounds. 389 was scrapped in 1954 and was one of the last remaining 060s running on the Great Northern. Engine number 5 is also in the A9 class and built by Baldwin. However, this engine was delivered in October of 1907. She was also rebuilt with 52-inch drivers. .785 is a C4S class 080 steam switcher that was rebuilt from an F8 class 280, which had been numbered 1157. She is seen working the yard at Wenatchee, Washington in 1949. Engine 820 is a member of the C1 class, which was among 40 locomotives built for the Great Northern and delivered in July 1918 by Baldwin. In Minot, North Dakota in 1949, Engine 823 is backing through the yards, completing her switching assignments. Between regular shoppings, 823 is displaying a green boiler jacket and cylinder covers. She was scrapped in 1963 after a long career of service for the Great Northern. .825 is backing to the roundhouse after finishing her chores at the Grand Forks yard. She was retired in March of 1958 and scrapped in 1963. .844 is working the Havre, Montana yards in 1948. Great Northern had a large fleet of 280s like this F8 class number 1150, seen at Everett, Washington in 1948. In her last year of service, this engine will be working the branch line logging operations. She will be scrapped the next year. The 280s operated system-wide in all types of service. Engine 1141 is seen pulling a small freight train just east of Whitefish, Montana. Great Northern had a need for a small, fast type of steam engine, and they put their H-class Baldwin-built 462s to good use, hauling both freight and passenger trains. Equipped with 73-inch drivers, they are capable of speeds in excess of 70 miles per hour. Locomotive 1355 is leaving Snowden, Montana in 1950 with the local on its way to Bainville. 1355 was renumbered in 1914, her original engine number being 1477. Fast and reliable, these smaller locomotives served Great Northern until the early 1950s. At Old Pitts, Washington, engine 1452 hauls a mixed consist while still displaying its green cylinder covers. In this classic scene, 1370 is racing across the countryside after making a stop for passengers. In a spectacular winter scene, Great Northern Steam Engine 1353 leaves Havre, Montana with train 223, the daily local. Closing out her final days, 1453 works a log train at Gold Bar, Washington. She is scrapped in July 1953 after 44 years of service. Needing a more powerful type of locomotive, the Great Northern acquired the 282 design in 1911 and placed these locomotives in the 01 to 08 class. .3386 leads her train through Williston, North Dakota in 1951. Built at GN's Great Falls shops in December 1930, this engine was rebuilt at the Superior shops in 1944 as an 08 class locomotive. These are the biggest 282s the railroad owned and are capable of 75,000 pounds of tractive effort. A work train is backing past the depot at Snowden, Montana in 1951. The power for this train is engine 3221, an 04 class built in 1920 and later scrapped in April 1955. The small depot at Bainville, Montana is typical of stations along the Great Northern. 3385 arrives at the station from the east and will stop briefly to pick up additional cars that have been set out. .3392 is switching for the two branch lines that run out of Bainville. Train 223, powered by engine 1355, is the local headed east from the Bainville station, while 3396 is leading the approaching freight. Engine 3236, another 04 class 282, leads her train of tank cars past the depot for the refinery at Williston, North Dakota. The 282s are the common road engines through the eastern part of Montana and the Dakotas, as their relative efficiency and high tractive effort proved adequate for the railroad needs. By the mid-1950s, these engines were replaced by diesel power. Near Priest River, Idaho, 3136 moves a cut of flats to Newport. At Nashua, Montana, engine 3253 moves its train eastward with number 879, and 080 being deadheaded in the consist. Engine 3222 has the distinctive duty of leading other steam engines that are to be scrapped as it heads through Bainville, Montana. The Opine Line junction branched off at Bainville, turning north to Opine, passing through towns like Medicine Lake, Antelope, and Redstone. Running at track speed, 3385 is being chased through Bainville as she continues towards Wolf Point, Montana. Leaving Havre, Montana on a cold winter day in 1949, engine 3141 heads out of town for Malta. In the winter of 1950 at Bainville, Montana, engine 3383 steams past the station as she continues west. The cold air is creating great clouds of steam from the hot exhaust of the locomotive. .3388 arrives from the west, closely followed by another train that can be seen in the distance. The second train is powered by engine 3386 and will once again rattle the station walls as she passes. No finer example of steam in action can be found than this scene of 3386, leading her train past the Bainville station during the winter of 1951. In need of even greater steam power for their passenger trains, Great Northern purchased 482's mountain-type locomotives from both Lima and Baldwin. Engine 2522 was built in October 1923 and is classified as a P2 locomotive. 2522 leaves Williston, North Dakota with a short train in 1951, having been bumped from mainline passenger service by diesels. 2508 is at Troy, Montana in freight service while still showing off her green boiler jacket. In Seattle, Washington at the King Street overcrossing, 2517 leads the Empire Builder eastward from the station in this 1949 scene. In Vancouver, Washington, 2509 rolls past the yard office, heading to Portland, Oregon. In this 1949 scene, 2506 is heading west with an extra troop train during the Korean War conflict. Needing even larger passenger power, Great Northern acquired these 484 locomotives from Baldwin in February 1930. Engine 2575 is an S2 class locomotive with 80-inch drivers and 58,310 pounds of tractive effort. Fast and powerful, these engines could run at better than 100 miles per hour. 2576 races through Bainville, Montana with a mail train. In another scene, 2522 pulls train number 9, the Dakotan, through Williston, North Dakota as it continues east. Painted in GN Glacier Green, 2585 leaves Spokane with the Cascadian in 1949. .2586 rolls through Culbertson, Montana in 1951 with an older Burlington troop car in the consist. 2588 arrives in Bainville with a freight train. As she passes by the station, the drivers are being heavily sanded as she accelerates her train. "2585 arrives from the east and will drop off a switchman as the engine rolls by. A little later, 2576 arrives, and as this engine passes by, she will come face to face with the future. Engine 2584 is retired in December 1957 after 27 years of active service and is the sole survivor of the once proud fleet of Great Northern 484s. She is saved from the scrapper's torch and placed on public display in Havre, Montana on May 15, 1964. The Q1 Class 210-2s were built by Baldwin in November of 1923, and most of this class lasted until the mid-1950s when they too were scrapped. In this dramatic scene, Engine 2115 is double-headed with Engine 2013, a 2880 at Lava, Oregon. Still operating under her own power in this 1949 scene taken at Klamath Falls, Engine 1968 is a 2680. This engine was rebuilt from an earlier style 2680 to a simple articulated at GN's Great Falls shops in June 1926. "2880 number 2013 is running south towards Klamath Falls as she drags her freight across the high desert of eastern Oregon. In a rare black and white scene taken in 1948, a big R2 class 2882 steams into Minot, North Dakota. The most powerful of all Great Northern steam locomotives are these huge 2882s with their 146,000 pounds of tractive effort. Arriving in Williston, North Dakota, the engine will make a stop for a crew change. The power will be swapped to a smaller 282 for the remainder of the journey east across relatively flat country. Rolling along the Columbia River Gorge, engine 2043 is under slow orders as it proceeds past a work train. Running at speed, 2040 races through Gold Bar, Washington. At Everett, Washington, another 2882 is making good time with her manifest. West of Bainville, Tony DeRosa paces engine 2049 in this remarkable scene of a 2882 at work. These engines had been rebuilt with new boilers supplied by Alco in 1948. They continued to operate until late 1957, while several other engines ran until April of 1958. They will all be scrapped in 1963, ending Great Northern steam operations forever. Northern Pacific has a fleet of 060s, and engine 1132 is seen here, switching the North Coast Limited in the yard at Seattle. .1086 belongs to the L9 class of 060s and is also working the yard at Seattle. East of Yardley, Washington, 460 number 1355 is working her freight towards Sandpoint, Idaho in 1955. Northern Pacific 282s are classified as W-class locomotives. Number 1787 is a W3, having a tractive effort of 63,460 pounds. Engine 2601 is an A-class Northern built by the American Locomotive Company in 1929 for the Northern Pacific. These engines are primarily used in passenger service. Northern Pacific's modern steam locomotives are these Z-class Challengers. The last of a group in this class are the Z8s, rated at 106,890 pounds of tractive effort, and are among the largest Challengers ever built. Spokane, Portland, and Seattle ran steam engines, and in this scene, 484 number 700 is double-headed with Great Northern's 3127 at Wishram, Washington in 1949. Entering Bend, Oregon, engine 532, a 282 Mikado, is double-heading with Great Northern's Challenger number 4000. The largest of all steam engines on the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle Railroad were these 4664 Challengers. These engines were the same as the Northern Pacific Z6 and Z8 class locomotives. Engine 910 is rolling through the yard at Spokane, Washington in 1955 after making a switching move. Engine 903 leaves Spokane and leads her train to Hilliard, Washington. Making a stop at Avery, Washington, the local will wait in the clear for the number 900 to pass with her train. Union Pacific's 482 number 7012 arrives in Bend, Oregon with a freight. At Portland, Oregon's Union Station, the Portland Rose with Union Pacific's 3984 leaves town as it makes its journey eastward towards Cheyenne, Wyoming. Southern Pacific also ran into this area as a cab forward heads for Bend, Oregon. In Bieber, California, a rare Western Pacific 2662, engine 203, is spotted alongside the engine house. Montana Western, a short branch line railroad of 20 miles, ran between Conrad and Valier, Montana. It was formed in 1909 and sold to the Great Northern in 1970. Primarily constructed to haul grain to Conrad, the railroad interchanged the loaded cars to Great Northern. Number 5 is a 280, one of 2 steam engines the line owned. Originally, Number 5 was Great Northern's Number 544, built by Brooks Locomotive Works in 1892. It was sold to Montana Western in 1950. In addition to freight service, this side door coach is used to transport passengers between the two towns. From the driving of the final spike on January 6, 1893 at Stevens Pass to the merger of the Burlington Northern in February of 1970, the Great Northern has been the gateway to the Orient. The Great Northern will be remembered in history as one of this country's greatest railroads. And thanks to the camera of Anthony DeRosa, some of these memories will be shared for all to remember. The Great Northern Railway.